Welcome to our next session of education policy and politics. During this session, we're going to take a look at local policy control and the many changes that have taken place in recent years. School boards, superintendents, and increasingly mayors must implement policy made on the national and state level while balancing policy issues in politics. This session will explore the policy challenges for 21st century local education leaders. Local education policy and politics in the 21st century are dramatically impacted by state and federal policy. Goals 2000 that we talked previously about during Clinton administration, No Child Left Behind during the second Bush administration, Race to the Top that took place during Obama administration, and the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, under Obama, have configured the relationship between federal education policy and local politics. Certainly, a number of policy issues still do remain under local control, such as teacher contracts and curriculum. However, the overwhelming amount of time and resources now committed on the local level to implementing federal and state access, accountability, and other reforms have squeezed the time and resources for developing and implementing local policies. In fact, many local school systems complain that they spend too much time preparing students for state and national tests in response to the federal and state guidelines and policy changes. Of course, one of the main issues has been the addition of strong mayoral involvement in the development of charter schools and other issues of choice. Local education has lost its position as an exceptional issue. No longer is it solely managed by a supposedly nonpartisan school board and professional superintendent. Education is now a political issue on all levels of government. This has become particularly true on the local level since mayoral management of schools returned in numerous cities during the 1990s. Now, local education budgets must vie with other city services for funding and political support. Mayors have become so involved in policy that school superintendents and school boards are now often appointed by mayors in many jurisdictions. Boston and New York were early converts to mayoral control. New York under Michael Bloomberg, who is pictured, and of course, a presidential candidate. And the federal courts order the school board to conduct busing for desegregation in the 1970s wreaked havoc in Boston politics for years. Therefore, if local politics impact policy implementation, then it may be helpful to have the mayor deeply involved with schools. Mayoral control gives a clear line of responsibility. Further, mayoral appointed school boards can reduce policy influence of special interest groups that dominate some large urban districts. One benefit from mayoral control was to give school systems more local support and attention from local authorities, plus more political power for school systems. Mayoral control may also enable school systems to take bolder policy initiatives. Strong mayors bring the business community and other elites who have a stake in schools back in the governance of schools. More involvement by a bigger variety of local stakeholders can lead to greater promotion of choice in charter policies as well, and that has been the case. On the other hand, mayoral control does it mean policy decisions are more influenced by politics when a supposedly independent school board and professional superintendent are in charge of the system? Does it limit parental and minority family participation because independent school boards are easier to influence and control by policy and political elites? One of the challenges with school board control, and this is probably not as acute in Kentucky as it is around the country, is that boards were first established as examples of local control as a reform that would take schools out of the hands of corrupt mayors. However, over 100 years of existence as educational reform, school boards today are often viewed merely as another of a myriad of stakeholders involved in micropolitics of the school system. Nevertheless, courts have made it clear that school boards remain a major policy platform for what goes on in classrooms. Many board members do not know much about education, but rather they are politicians responsible to all the constituents and often just looking to move up politically. The boards have the confusing mission of implementing federal and state policy, representing the concerns of local stakeholders, and serving as a board of directors for a professional enterprise. As a result, the effectiveness of boards varies greatly from district to district. School boards also have the fiduciary responsibility of managing local taxpayer money. Where there is no mayoral control, school boards often try to micromanage school operations. In Kentucky, there's a law that gives limits to the kind of micromanagement that school boards can operate. For example, it cannot get involved in personnel issues and the hiring of teachers and other professionals. In other instances, school boards defer regularly to superintendents who have the educational policy and management expertise. Boards can also have a positive impact on policy implementation by holding superintendents accountable, reaching out to parents, advocating for special education and minority families. School board roles are often confused by well-meaning superintendents who want to continue controlling schools. Superintendents can control the power in the local micro-political environment through their control of information, educational expertise, the school bureaucracy. Superintendents can also control local power by making themselves heard at the state level, building relations with parents, and controlling the school board agenda. Whomever is in charge at the local level, the political burdens are enormous. The local political leadership must sort out stakeholder demands on the federal, state, and local levels in a manner that enable the best implementation of education policy. It's no wonder that the average tenure for superintendents is just a few years. In earlier sessions, we discussed education policy. Despite all the changes from No Child Left Behind, ESSA, the local government, whether it be the mayor or the school board, is the implementer of school reforms. This federalist system includes local policy implementation, does not exist in most other countries. Other OECD or Economic Cooperation and Development nations, highly developed nations, dictate local education policy from their national level, from their capital. Furthermore, since many federal reform programs began in the 1990s, American local governments have in fact experienced new opportunities in their implementation role. LEAs, or local education associations, have become more entrepreneurial. They have brought in more outside vendors to provide supplemental services, and they have brought in more choice with the growth of charters and outside philanthropy. Race to the Top has encouraged parent trigger laws, which now exist in 7 states. Also, the Common Core standards have made it possible for local governments to compare their activities and the accomplishments of similar looking jurisdictions beyond the state lines. While still part of the American federalist system, the 21st century LEAs may be considered more powerful than they were at the end of last century. That's an item for debate.